Chapter 463. In a cocoon of overlapping body heat, a deep sense of calm mingled with a tingling pleasure, making for a pleasantly comfortable sensation. Yudhir had said he didn't want to engage while turning over, but touching like this should be fine. As Kishir gently ran his hand down Yudhir's back, the warm skin beneath twitched but accepted Kishir's touch. A moment later, Yudhir also lifted his hand to caress Kishir's cheek. It was much like his previous gestures. The initial contact barely felt heavy, awkward even, but gradually grew more confident, eventually finding a stable rhythm in completing the movement. From the cheek to just above the ear, where a slight imprint remained, then to the forehead, where the hair clung, and then back to the cheek again. Observing and feeling this process, Kishir suddenly realized something. He hadn't noticed when he received similar touches from Yudhir before, but this touch strongly resembled the way he stroked Yudhir's back. And what this fact implies is, from now on, every time Yudhir's hand caressed something else, this movement and all of Kishir would become invisible traces etched forever in that touch. Whether Kishir himself was present or not, it would remain as an unchanging shadow. It was a small, insignificant thing that nobody would pay attention to, but this assurance struck Kishir so profoundly special. Why are you smiling again? Yudhir tilted his head slightly, as if he had sensed Kishir's mood through the contact of their skin, even though Kishir had smiled without making a sound. Because I'm happy. Don't stop touching. I would like you to keep going. Feel free to touch me however you want. I will continue doing the same. Is it that good? Absolutely. Do you know how special it is to be able to freely touch something? Though he answered cheerfully, his tone had a shade of darkness. Kishir briefly thought of his brother, who wore thick gloves throughout the welcoming ceremony, and of his own childhood hands encased in gloves twice as thick. Power that was not properly controlled could indiscriminately hurt those around it, eventually tearing even oneself apart. Loved ones, childhood pets, none could escape it. For those like him, whose power grew frighteningly quickly and became unpredictable, numerous secret barriers had been installed in various palaces of the imperial palace. Walls imbued with protective spells to minimize the impact and damage of any internal incidents appeared as nothing more than ordinary walls from the outside. In his own bedroom in the palace, there were as many as 3 layers of such walls. Always doubt yourself, never be sure. Doing nothing is the best way to help everyone. That was the best method to slightly delay a terrifying future, in which he might one day burst from not being able to bear his own power. Those useless yet still deeply imprinted warnings flickered in the corners of his mind, disappearing as soon as he looked into Yudhir's eyes. Kishir skillfully hid his thoughts and smiled. So, how are you feeling? Are you alright? I'm fine. No pain anywhere? At this, Yudhir glanced briefly downward with a subtly complex expression. I'm fine now. Seeing such words, it was clear that Yudhir had felt overwhelmed when he had inserted himself, but the underlying meaning seemed far more positive than anticipated. More importantly, are you alright, Commander? As far as I can tell from feeling around just now, I'm fine. At those words, Kishir's hand, which had been caressing Yudhir's cheek, paused for a moment. It wasn't that Yudhir was particularly oblivious, but he couldn't fathom why Kishir had started by touching the areas that were easiest for checking body temperature. In addition to the heat, the lower region as well. Lower? I would say that's just how it normally is. Yudhir had briefly lain down to assess his condition and converse, But Kishir remained in an unyielding state even after their activity. Unless forced, it seemed unlikely that it would wilt on its own in this situation. So what? There was still plenty of time. Kishir was a man who wanted to savor every sensation he could feel in life, be it pain or agony. Lying beside each other, either, who had felt Kishir's heat the entire time, seemed somewhat baffled by his attitude, but soon sighed and lowered his head. Once again, laying his cheek on Kishir's chest, he broke the silence. I can hear your heartbeat. Well, you must have heard how excited I am right now. Yes, I didn't realize it would be beating this hard. The tone encapsulated in the faint murmur was slightly different this time, a voice hazy like a dream and oddly melancholic. Kishir threaded his fingers through Yudhar's hair and whispered, Exactly, but it was even more intense earlier. I never thought I would feel something like that in this world. Did you? Tears that had unknowingly flowed from both of them, the astonishing sensations that breathed new life into their flesh, even the oddity that made it seem as if everything existed solely for this moment, all were assuredly not felt by Kishir alone. Yudhir did not respond, but it was okay. It wasn't a question that required an answer. Sometimes words aren't needed to understand. Perhaps it was a part of the connection, like a thin thread that had existed between them thus far. There was no other explanation. Before pondering the identity of that connection any further, Yudhir sat up. He placed his lips against Kishir's and then straddled him, his eyes ablaze. Somehow, Yudhir himself was also half rejuvenated. I have thought about it. Yudhir, whose hand now securely gripped Kishir's, which was larger than his own face, murmured as he looked down. I would rather you didn't worry so much. About what? As far as I know, relationships between awakeners with second gender aren't that risky, so long as their heat period don't overlap. I'm certain of at least that. And I, with a gaze as piercing as a flash of lightning, Yudhir spoke. I came here wanting every part of you, Commander. Ah, what a bold declaration. In that instant, the smile vanished from Kishir's face. Any plans for additional rest were immediately abandoned. With a strange sense of a burning ache deep in his throat, Kishir pulled Yudhir into his arms. Their entwined bodies rolled over, this time in the opposite direction from before. Kishir, with fingers raised, felt the touch greedily caressing his body and moaned with eyes half closed. Yudhir, biting his lip, anxiously guided him. The insertion was smoother than before. Muscles, naturally toned from the traces of life and long training, writhed and clung to the other. Instead of the ecstasy felt from their previous union, a desperate desire to reach even a little more took its place. Every moan that flowed out, revealing pleasure without filter, was met with an increasing pleasure from the other in an endless cycle. There was no room for thought. Suddenly, Kishir thought their moving bodies, overlapping like white waves, seemed as if they were dancing together. Come to think of it, maybe soon I could dance with you. He wanted to say that, but the heat of the lips biting and clinging roughly swept away all thoughts. Every time Kishir tried to think of something else, Yudhir, as if sensing it, touched his face and pulled him closer. In front of those staring eyes, nothing could be hidden or avoided. A towering wave surged, scratching and engulfing everything inside.